right. The hearing of the Board of Zoning Appeals Code is now called to order at 6:31 on February 16th. I ask the recording secretary please call roll attendance for members of the board.
Mr. Pilato?
Here.
Mr. Ferraro?
Here.
Mr. Chalco? Ms. Metzel?
Here.
Mr. Iafreda?
Speaking.
Also present from the building department is building official Bob Rodick, which he was here, he'll be back, and law director Mark Verdetti. All persons in the audience are required to sign in at the sheet, but we have nobody here.
No Chanel.
Nobody. Has everybody looked over the minutes from their last meeting?
Yes.
So we make a motion, please.
Dick Iafreda make a motion that we accept the minutes from the last meeting, which was in December.
Second.
Okay, Rachel?
Mr. Pilato?
Yes.
Mr. Ferraro?
Yes.
Ms. Metzel?
Yes.
Mr. Iafreda?
Yes.
I'm not going to go through the issues, but please raise your right hand. There's nobody here. The hearing will be conducted in accordance with the provision of the Ohio Sunshine Law. The notice of the hearing was duly published in a newspaper of general circulation in the city of Macedonia. The notices are available for review upon request at the building department. The rules of the board require affirmative vote of 3 members in order to pass regardless of the number of members present at the hearing. The hearing is conducted in an informal manner to review the evidence and to respond to questions. However, there is an outline of steps will be taken in order. An applicant does not have to be present for the board to hear the case as publicized. In each case number, an appeal request will be announced as its turn arrives. The first case is Old Business Case 660, and the appeal for the order is in order. Is there any correspondence from the notified adjacent property owners?
No.
Is there any unsolicited correspondence regarding this case?
No.
Okay. We will guess we'll be waiting for the zoning.
Since our people that are here for their request, for their zoning variance, I make a motion we have the election, since we are by ourselves now, before they show up.
Okay, we could do that. I don't have a problem with that. So we'll just do elections. Does anybody have any?
I make a motion.
Second.
You second it, okay? And I will make a motion that we accept the same officers for at least 1 more year.
Any seconds?
I was going to nominate Kent, but he's not here, so I don't know what we should do about that.
Well, then I'll second the motion. Since Ken's not here and we're here.
Mr. Pilato?
Yes.
Mr. Ferraro?
Yes.
Mr. Iafreda?
Yes.
Ms. Metzel?
What are we saying yes to?
The motion to accept the same officers for 1 more year. Mr. Pilato as chairman, Mr. Ferraro as vice chairman.
Okay. Fine.
So that all stays the same then. All right. The zoning inspector, now please state the city's position on case 660. You have anything?
I'll go through Chris's memo in a second, because that hasn't changed. But I want to let you know, they're on their way. I thought the meeting started at 7. So they're actually right across the street.
Are they bringing drinks or dinner?
I didn't ask.
Yeah, they are.
I'd like to pass the line, please.
I'm terribly sorry we're late. We thought it was at 7. Sorry about that.
You're only 5 minutes late. So
Bring a couple chairs up.
We were up at the property, so we didn't have her to come.
Okay. We'll need both of you to sign in, please.
Sure.
Whoa.
Just tear it apart.
There you go.
Mr. Snow, we can never be anywhere off duty, so to speak, because I have that same jacket.
Well, I decided to be a little more casual than you are. So we apologize about that. A terrible way to start. So here is the whole set of plans.
Okay, we got to back up 1 second, hold on. We're going to go through the whole process, okay? We're already started, so we're going to do what we have to do for use, okay?
Yep.
All persons wishing to speak on this issue, please raise their right hand and affirm this oath. That's both of you. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you will give before this board is the best of your knowledge and accurate and truthful presentation of the facts? If so, say I do.
I do.
Now in turn, please state your name and relationship to the case for the tape recorder and voice recognition.
My name is Jeff Snell. I'm the attorney for the applicant.
Do I need to go any more? Do we need to go through everything further than that?
No, the rest of the stuff was for you guys.
Okay. Will the zoning inspector now please state the city's position? Does the board have any questions on case 660, which is old business?
And this is a memo from Chris Hall. The logistics of the request haven't changed. So the request is that the applicant is seeking an area variance to reduce the parking setback from the right-of-way from a required 20-foot minimum from the setback from the right-of-way line to 10 feet 8 inches. Chapter 1171.11 off-street parking E2 requires that off-street parking may be located in the front, side, or rear yard areas where the points of access, curbing, striping, lighting location in reference to buildings, property lines, and walks, etc., and landscape screening have been approved by the Planning Commission, and provided that such parking and access drives shall be set back from the street right-of-way line by a distance of 20 feet. The findings are that the additional parking spaces for 1011 East Aurora Road are not required by code as stated by the city planner in his memo of July 11th, which is attached. GFS Marketplace received a 7-foot variance on August 21st, 2013. And I think that was in the original application. The board is to consider the application for an area variance as to section 1171.11 E2A off-street parking to reduce the parking setback from the right-of-way from the required 20 feet minimum to 10 feet 8 inches.
Does the board members have any questions of the city?
Where'd it go?
Put that one down. Sorry, I thought I had the big one going, so that one should be fine. Any questions? Go ahead, Dick.
Explain this 7 foot. They asked for a 7-foot variance, so instead of 20 feet, it is now 13 feet.
No, that the setback is required to be 20 feet from the public right-of-way, and that's where the parking would be the closest point.
Okay.
But the request before the board is to reduce that amount to 10 feet 8 inches. So that would be what, 9 foot 4 inches would be the reduction.
Any other questions?
Am I looking at the current, is this
Same as the last, I didn't
Didn't
change.
change at all?
No.
Because I can't see that far.
It's a bigger version of that.
The board will now allow the presentation from the applicant, so we will let you speak, and then we'll go from there.
Thanks so much.
Yeah.
So again, my name is Jeff Snell. I'm an attorney and represent 1011 East Aurora Road. I did provide a letter as a supplement that you're probably aware of, and I'll just briefly review that. I've also had some conversations with Mr. Rodick with regard to the property. So we believe we meet practical difficulties, and we'll talk about that very specifically. What I'd like to do is kind of review the regulation and then what exactly we're asking to do. So you're all aware of it. I have a number of pictures if anybody needs to see them. But the existing building was built as, I think we all know, was a Huntington Bank building around 2005. There are 4 lanes next to it for the drive-through that remain. He's going to be enclosing that area and adding an additional area behind that of about 2,000 square feet, bringing the whole building to just about 8,150 feet in round numbers. Your zoning regulation requires a minimum parking requirement, and I carefully watched the August 18th presentation and listened to the comments that were made, and I want to address kind of the options and what was discussed and what I found as I read this. So the zoning, what we're seeking is a variance to allow that parking to occur in front of the building closer to 82. The property drops off as you come in from that private road. And so when you look at the development, which is, here's a map that may be helpful. But if you look at the development that is known as Gordon Food Service, Gordon Food
Can I
Service.
see that, Sam?
Sure. Can you find it on there? Do you want me to help you? I have a printout for everybody if everybody wants the same thing, and we can look at it the same way. Here's a map for everybody, and I can shout out parcel numbers. How's that? I'm going to give you this one, because that way we're all working off the same map. So when we look at this, the parcel that we are talking about is 12584. That is the parcel right here. And you'll see Alexandria Trail in there. That's actually a private road. And then this is Gordon Food Service. So you'll see what Gordon was allowed to do is put in some parking by 82, and they put in a retaining wall and then put that parking. The problem with this building, the Huntington building, the building was never built to have really retail coming in and out. It was really built for bank traffic of a drive-through. That's why the building is so far forward on the lot compared to Gordon, which is really in the rear of the property and to the east.
Which one is Gordon?
Gordon is the one right here known as 33-12797. You'll see a big
this
white
one.
roof. Yeah.
Oh, got it, okay.
So Gordon sits way in the back of the lot, in the back corner. And then their retail is around that. What is being proposed is about 4,000 square feet to enclose that area where the drive-through is, and then extend that in the back. What happens is the alignment of the driveway getting out to Alexandria Trail aligns right with Gordon's entrance. In other words, for traffic, when you pull out of the bank or the former bank, you are looking right out at the entrance to Gordon Food Service. That is necessitated because the building has that round structure in the front, the existing building. So there's our practical difficulties. We can't move that building. So one of the suggestions, I think the chair made this suggestion, why don't you move the driveway closer to 82, the drive that goes around the building? That drive is 13 feet in the front of the building, correct? 13 feet. If we move it towards 82, we'll still need the variance because we're going to be closer than 20 feet to 82. But more importantly, we can't do it because if we did, we can't get to the alignment of the drive to get out onto Alexandria Trail. In other words, there's no...
Well, when they put that in at Gordon Food Service and at the bank, it was done on purpose.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that probably will never ever move because the buildings aren't going to move, just like you said.
Right.
Okay. I understand where you're going with this, okay? But go ahead, I'll let you finish.
Yeah, but that's okay. But your suggestion in that meeting was, because I listened to it a couple of times, your suggestion was, what if you move the road and have head-in parking right in front of the building? And then the road around the building was closer to 82 to allow flow all the way around.
And what I meant there was if you not move the road, close that off and put an entrance and exit in the back of the parking lot. Okay, and you can go around the building okay, all in one way and go in and out from the back. You don't have to have that. You can close that off. That was my suggestion. One of those suggestions. Go
Okay,
ahead.
and maybe I misunderstood as I heard it. The incredible problem here is we're trying to take that space and turn it into retail, and the retail faces 82, and the entrances are gonna be from 82. I mean, when we go to Tractor Supply, we don't wanna go to the back of the building. We think we're going through the front door. So we wanna have parking closer, because when we did the measurements, most of the parking is 200 feet from the entrances of these buildings. So that's why we want to get parking like the property next door, Gordon's Food Service, so we can put those parking spaces in there and get in there.
Gordon Food Service also parks in the back of their parking lot and walks to the front of their parking lot.
Actually, they only have parking on the front and the side, and then I can share
The side of the building,
the side of the
they have
building,
parallel parking, they have,
but they don't have any parking actually behind the building.
no, because of the location of the building.
Yeah, and the building, and I'll share with you this, I told Mr. Rodick this as I read through it. B1, which would be a Business 1 district, and that's the other side of Crow. So like where, yeah,
Right.
Mr. McLarini's properties, those properties have specific distances on the side and the rear yards, and those side yards have to be 10 feet away as a buffer. In this area, B2, it actually has to be 25 feet, but I can find very few that comply. In fact, Gordon Food Service, their building, I just took a picture of it, their building is 10 feet from their line to the east. It's real close. It should be at least 25 feet, it's 10.
Well, they probably came in with a variance or asked for a variance.
I believe they did. And I think what happened is they pushed their building to the back corner, which then opened up the parking and the retail. The problem here is we have a building that was never meant for a lot of retail. It was a bank, people would occasionally come in, but most people lined up to go through the drive-through. That's why there's 4 lanes. So we are seeking to be more like Gordon Food Service and more like the other properties along there. I pointed out the daycare.
This is your building, right?
Yeah.
That's what I want to show you.
The daycare is similarly situated closer to 82. The parking will be actually below State Route 82, meaning once the retention wall is built, there won't be headlights going into 82. You will really see over those cars rather than actually see the cars. One of the other suggestions that was made is,
I'd like to see that.
could you put parking to the west? In other words, on the west side of the building, could you do that?
Right.
Between the edge of the new building and the edge of the property line, there's 32 feet. We want to keep a buffer. If we did that, if we did the 32 feet, we need 20 feet for the parking space, and then we need a lane of travel. That would allow us 12 feet to the building,
Right.
which probably wouldn't comply with what the fire department needs to get completely around the building in the event of an emergency.
But if
So-
you use parallel parking there along the side, okay, that would comply.
Well, it would be very difficult to use parallel parking because we would have to make the entire road around the building one way. In other words, you couldn't parallel park either way. Everybody it would be a one way all the way around the building, which we find difficult.
Isn't that what it is right now?
No.
No, it is, once the drive-through opens, like, once we get the parking lot, it's gonna be all over 2 lanes.
Yeah, but I mean, now that's how it was set up, one way to come through, right?
Well, because it was a drive-through bank.
Right.
And so no one ever, that whole section was meant to only be one way around. So
Okay.
I'd like to talk about the factors that you need to look at with regard to practical difficulties. So I know you had this discussion last time, but Duncan is the court case. There are 7 factors to look at. No one says what they are, how they weigh. I'm just going to read them and explain our position with regard to them. Whether the property in question will yield a reasonable return or whether there can be a beneficial use of the property without the variance. well, obviously the property has a beneficial use, it has tenants. We would like to somehow repurpose the space under roof that has the drive-through and get rid of what is a bit of an eyesore when it's not being used as a bank. 2, whether the variance is substantial. We don't think the variance is substantial. It's 9 feet 4 inches, closer to 82. We'll talk about how it relates with the rest of the neighborhood. Whether the essential character of the neighborhood would be substantially altered, or whether adjoining properties would suffer a substantial detriment as a result of the variance. We don't think there is a substantial detriment to any of the adjoining property owners. Gordon has the exact same setup. If you go further to the east or west, you can see that the daycare on this side of 82 is very close to 82, just like we would be. The B1 space actually is built the same way. Parking is kind of tucked in there the same way. Whether the variance would adversely affect the delivery of government services, well, of course it won't. Whether the property owner purchased the property knowing the zoning restriction, I don't know if he knew the details of it, but we accept that. I mean, it is what it is.
I need to bring, sorry to interrupt, I need to confirm, this plan, exactly the same plan, was introduced at the end of 2018, and it was approved without even a variance, and it was approved, it was not preliminary approval, it was waiting for the construction document, and I never applied for it, I never submitted, because I was not sure who gonna come in.
And that plan, so we know with the city, that's only good for a year. He did not move forward with building it, but it was approved. Next,
At that time.
At that time, yes, exactly.
Right.
Whether the property owner's predicament feasibly could be obviated through some other method other than a variance. The whole plan of trying to do something to the west along the side of the building would likely still, even with parallel parking, it's still going to need some kind of variance, because we're probably not going to get approval for the fire department to be able to get around the building. If we went and tried to do something different in the front, we can't affect this drive in and out from Alexandria. I guess we could try to move that, but then we'd have 2 entrances off of that
You mean
road.
this one here?
Oh, sorry, yes, here, which
Okay.
lines up with.
You have an entrance and exit in the back of the property right now?
But we need 2.
Why do you need 2?
Because the fire department is going to require us to be able to access it in 2 ways. We're not going to be able, so what I'm saying is, if we move this, we have to move it back here so we can access. We're stuck. So
Go ahead.
the biggest issue in this is that, we don't want to affect the curb cut, and we have an existing structure that's probably too far forward. I mean, I'd love it to be like Gordon back in the back. And then the last standard is whether the spirit and intent behind the zoning requirement would be observed and substantial justice done by granting the variance. And that's obviously in your hands to consider.
And I'll just jump in real quick if you don't mind, Mr. Snell. So Mr. Snell just went through the traditional Duncan factors, the factors that, as you all know, are actually set forth in our code. They're slightly different than Mr. Snell went over, but I would say substantially similar. That's in subsection D1 of 1135.13. And just as a quick example, Mr. Snell went over whether the variance is substantial. Our code has a little bit additional and is the minimum necessary to make possible the reasonable use of land or structures, just to state that for your benefit.
Thank you, Mark.
And then I want to talk about, I really appreciate that too, Mark. Let's talk through the parking and the requirements of parking, because I think one of the issues is, well, wait till you get a tenant, come back, and then decide what to do.
See, that was going back to statement number 1. You used the word tenants as a plural.
Yes.
We don't have tenants yet going into that. Do we know that it has to be substantial parking as you're requesting before we get a tenant?
Well, here's our,
Also, to add to that, you also said retail. Is there retail going in there? And what is the retail going in there?
So this is a bit of chicken and egg, and this is what creates our practical difficulties. In order to complete this portion of the parking, the wall, the concrete wall, and that area of parking is about $80,000. One of the problems, he's not worried about speccing out the property for, developing this and building the building. The problem is that anybody who wants to use this for a restaurant or retail, while they're interested, they want to know that their clients and customers can get from the front of the building into the building. These 4 spaces in the front, we were there looking at these. While these 4 spaces are designed on here, practically it's probably going to be difficult to put these 4 spaces in here and be able to access this easily. These probably can't be ultimately located there for parking.
But this is what you submitted.
I understand that.
This is your plans, okay? So we're looking at your plans.
I understand that.
Go ahead.
I understand that. So the issue with the tenants is we have people who are interested, but they do want to know that there's parking here. So when we are developing this project, we want to take care of that parking at the same time. Now, your requirements require a minimum of parking, and there was some discussion about how much parking is required. So for a bank, every 200 square feet of interior property, a building, is required to have 1 parking space as the minimum. Interestingly, there is no maximum. When we calculate that, we calculate about 45. And when they took this area that is the drive-through, we're adding 2,000 feet to that drive-through behind it, okay? They counted what was in the drive-through for parking. And then under a bank requirement, it says they also need 4 stacking spaces for each drive-through window. So when they designed that, there were 4 drive-throughs, 4 places for all of them, which means they gave them 16 spaces plus the 45 spaces that exist around the building.
The stacking's not counted in your total spaces. The stacking is for when they come up to the drive-through.
Yeah.
Okay, and they're standing right behind each other.
Yeah, and I realize
that's not a parking space. That's just stacking. We did that at the Macedonia Commons, okay, for the buildings for the banks, all right, that they have out there. Okay, we need so many stacking spots, all right? That's not a parking spot. It's a stacking spot. So there's a difference between the two.
And I appreciate that, and thank you for clarifying that for me. But what it does say is every 200 feet, you were required to have it says here, banks and other financial institutions, 1 space for every 200 square foot of floor area. And what was said is this area, which is about 2,000 square feet where the drive-through is, still had to have parking for that. So between these two, between the existing building, which is 4155, and what was underneath the thing was 2,000. That's 6,000 square feet. 6,000 times divided by 200 is 6 times 5, 30 spaces. They got 45 spaces plus the stacking. So they were able to build more parking than the minimum as required. When your professional planner looked at this, your planner said, well, they're adding 2,000 square feet, but he did the division and said, you only get 45 spaces as the minimum. That's what's required. We like the spaces that we have, but they're in the wrong place. They need to be in front of the retail space. No one is going to park behind a building and walk around the building to get access. So we are seeking the variance because 1, it's in the central character of the neighborhood. 2, we can't find another way to resolve this because we have parking. Even this parking up here where the dentist parks, we're very lucky. The dentist has a lot of employees that operate out of there, but we're lucky that there's a few spaces here. But even those spaces, none of them are really, a couple are in front of the door, but all the rest are like behind the building. because it was never designed for that use, and we can't build the building. Now,
Well, their parking is all along the side and behind also. They have an entrance here.
Yeah.
Now, let me ask you, okay, on your blueprints that you guys submitted.
Yeah.
Okay, you have 4 doors,
yes,
okay, and your 4 parking spots, okay? Now you're saying that you're probably not gonna have 4 parking spots. So let me ask you, where's your entrance and exit to the building?
the entrance and exits are in the front, and these are the delivery entrances in the back. And just like this is the back of the building for the dentist, the retail customers for the dentist do not enter this door, they enter the front.
They used to go through this door for the dentist, there's other.
No, this is a bank exit or door only. There is no handle even from the outside.
It's the old entrance to the bank, they all come through here and the waiting
So I
area.
guess my point is you're gonna have 2 entrances to get into your retail, and this is one retail?
We might divide this retail into 2 spaces.
Here is
In other words,
here is the side, here is the 4 lane. There is one entrance, and there is this building, the current building.
Right.
2/3 is occupied, 1/3 is not occupied, and the third door gonna be from the side. So I'm gonna have 3 entrances for three stores here. Okay, that gonna need.
We don't see that on, I guess is what I'm saying is
Let me ask
I
you a
appreciate you
question.
coming in and telling us what you want to do, okay? You submitted plans for one building, okay, last meeting we had, if I'm not mistaken, it was brought that there was gonna be 1 tenant.
No.
I listened to the whole thing twice.
Well, this is
Well,
what
I
I got.
And I understand
Everybody
it.
speak up
I
what you
need
want
to
to
ask
say.
you a question.
Okay.
Well, and I'm
I
not,
need to ask you a question. All these properties that are retail that I'm applying, can you tell me if they all came to you to get the permit and they all have tenants?
Everybody that puts
There
a
is no,
building up or
all the
business.
common
Okay.
plaza, they all ask for a tenant
well,
before it was built?
hey,
Absolutely, that's part of the process here.
Yeah, so
That's
hey-
just what we do.
So-
We have our time now versus the first time to give you an answer or vote, vote on something when we don't even know what you have going.
well, here's what we have going, so we're clear. 2/3 of the existing building is occupied by the dentist. The building is not entirely occupied by the dentist.
Okay.
The dentist has an option to take over some of the additional space in the future, or we may add that space to one of these spaces. Could one person rent this whole space?
Hopefully.
Absolutely, that's what we'd like to do, and they can take this 2/3 of this building too. We don't know how that's gonna work, so much like a shopping center is built. Here's an entrance, you can buy this, you can be Antonio's Pizza, or you can be, or Sherwin-Williams, or you could be First,
But if you split this in 2 or 3, you're still gonna have to go to planning commission.
Yes.
and
We
get
understand that.
approval,
Yes.
Okay?
We
What I'm
understand.
saying is you're coming in here and asking us to vote on a variance,
Well-
okay, that
but,
we don't know what you wanna do.
but let's be clear, we went to the planning commission and they approved us for this plan, understanding that this sections could be divided into other offices. And I'm not trying to be difficult, but
I haven't seen anything in writing on that from the planning commission. Do you know anything about that?
I don't have those minutes with me at this point in time.
Okay.
so would there be a problem in dividing this building into 2 locations?
The problem is.
We need to go back.
The problem, I understand, but you want us to vote on a variance and we don't know what we're voting on.
Yes, we do.
Okay, this is the,
Can I interrupt?
go ahead.
Are you looking to put, if I counted this right, 14 extra spaces?
Yeah.
Is that, and then it's a certain amount of feet and all that, right? So this is what you're actually presenting you would like,
That's it.
14 more spaces.
On
So-
14 and 4 here.
Yes,
Let me explain
I'm
one
trying
more
to
thing. Yeah.
understand how many
There is-
spaces.
What they want to
you want.
do, the other thing is you're going with Gordon Food Service, okay? But you're not comparing apples to apples and oranges to oranges. Their building is on the far back side to the east. This building was built dead center.
And
Okay, we can't change that. That's how.
that's our
when-
practical difficulties
Well-
because of where it's built. The reason,
Okay.
can I say this?
Yeah.
Gordon Food Service violates the setbacks. And you said, well, they got a variance, and I know they got a variance, or at least they got a variance for what we're seeking, the 82 part. I don't know if they got a variance on their side yard, but their side yard was supposed to be 25 feet. It's 10.
We weren't on the
So,
board at the time.
I understand.
Okay?
I'm not
We
trying
don't
to-
have the minutes, all right?
And-
But if it's there, then they did send for variances, I
Okay.
would have to say so. Bob,
So-
Rob, you have anything
So
on that?
our,
Of the variance of board food service? Do you remember any of that, or?
Yeah,
And I get a chance
during
to
that
talk.
time.
Do you know what it was, Mr. Chairman?
this?
I personally wasn't here
I was
during
gonna
that
say,
When did
time.
you, when we were
Okay.
planning,
Yeah.
about
That
8
happened
months ago,
before.
6 months
Right.
ago?
The
Yeah.
meeting was in August 16th.
August 16th, before we came,
And
they
the
came here.
frustrating thing, like, I already have a building that I cannot play with, and I went and heard the meeting, and after me, they were a planned building that, actually, they even didn't buy the land, and they were just proposing. I talked to the previous owner for optimal dermatology, because they give these nice pictures and very impressive, like, the presentation about health, and how they run their business. I'm in the medical field, that's all, I work in corporation, and I know how funny the presentation are, and the real life is a medical office like any other medical office. They got 5 variants in a building that did not exist. What is the difference between like practical difficulty, or you want to give a lot of concessions because you like the distance?
In the case of GFS and in the case of, well, I can't comment on GFS because I wasn't here, but in the case of the other one that you mentioned, we know exactly what the practical difficulty is because of the type of business that's going in there, right? I'm assuming similar with GFS, right? Again, I can't comment on it, but in this situation, and maybe the law director can correct me if I'm wrong, but
Is it?
I would look at what was the second one on your list of
The dermatology.
Whether the variance is substantial.
right. So in this situation, I don't know if this is accurate, but the way I see this is that the variance is substantial because it's speculative and it would open up precedence to other potential businesses that don't have any specific business. Does that make sense?
Sure, but let me try to comment on that, okay? So the variance is 9 feet, 4 inches. It's not speculative. We know what it is. It's exactly there. It exists hang on. It exists to the east. It exists to the west, right? And what we know is the character of this B1 district. Lots of people haven't complied with side yards and other distances, whether those were.
When you say they didn't comply,
Well, they
you're not-
might have
you're
got-
not- You're not saying the truth, okay? You don't know.
They may have gotten a
Yeah, there you
variance
go. So
for
don't say
some,
that.
well, but here's the question. The rule is this, and there are a number of people who don't comply with that rule for whatever reason. I'm not saying they did anything wrong. Maybe they got a variance. We weren't here, right? But I'm saying the essential character of the neighborhood is not, this B1 district is not going to be harmed because there's a 9-foot 4-inch variance. It is not speculative in this sense. We are building 4,000 square feet of additional retail space. We need parking so people can get in. We can't get a tenant, the great argument is, well, get a tenant, come back, tell us who the tenant is, and we'll decide the parking. And sure, there'll be practical difficulties, but we can't assure that tenant that there's going to be parking. And the tenant who looks at this says, well, if my customers can't get to me and they have to park 200 feet away in the rear, they're not coming. I don't want this space. I'll go down the road and I'll buy next to.
You said that this was retail, okay? You can't tell us if it is retail or if it isn't retail, right? Whatever tenant's going in there.
Well, here's what I can tell you, that if it's a restaurant, the minimum requirement is 1 space for every 50 feet of floor footage, which is 4 times this requirement. What I'm saying is when this was approved for the bank, if they counted the area under the drive-through and they counted the existing bank, they still allowed them to build about 15 more spaces than they were, quote, entitled on the minimum. The minimum requirement is what we're talking about. There isn't a maximum, there's a minimum. We're saying we want to exceed the minimum, and I don't think it's substantial, because it's 9 feet 4 inches. We put a landscaping plan. The consultant for the city suggested certain kinds of plants. We changed the plan to comply with all his requirements.
That's landscaping, we go through it all the time.
I understand that, and we complied with all that. We need to put spaces in front of the building so we can attract a tenant, so we can turn this into retail space and get rid of what is, it's an eyesore. It's 4 drive-throughs that don't function, right? We all know what it was, but it isn't.
Is it gonna kind of match up to GFS with that black, white
Yes,
fence
it's
and
the-
everything you're gonna do?
it's the
kind of
identical-
Uniform, is that?
Yes.
Well, I've been
The
on,
same
I've
fence.
been on the board for 24 years, and
It's
a
gonna
lot
be
of our stuff, if you keep it uniform with the other
glass fence,
existing,
shrubs, everything
it
gonna be
helps
the same.
the appearance of the city,
Yes.
rather
yes.
than one guy has.
Here's the problem, okay? I'm gonna read this once again, okay, from our city planner, Mr. France, all right? And since you're reading all your codes, I'm gonna read you the code and what he has to say, okay? The off-street parking for the 8,159 square foot medical building is 33 spaces and 45 are provided in section 1171.11C, 11E, 2A. Requires a 20-foot setback from the right of the way when parking is located in the front yard. A new row of 14 spaces is proposed along Route 82 frontage with only a 10-foot setback. A 30-inch retaining wall is proposed along the northern edge of the proposed parking row, and no details are provided. Moreover, the new light poles parking is already provided and expanded, by the code. These spaces are unnecessary because enough parking is already provided in the expanded building and they do not comply with the setback requirements. Action item, eliminate the row of parking on Route 82. The code does not require this additional parking and it doesn't comply with the setback requirements. If the applicant desires to maintain this parking, a variance from the BZA is needed. Now, we have 33 spaces are available, 45 are there, okay? And what you brought to us at our table is 4 more spaces, so that's 49. So,
No, these are
all of
counted,
them.
these are counted in the mix. And what we did was, we
okay, so
took.
you still have, let me finish. So you still have, required spaces is 33 and you have 45, if these are counted in.
Yes.
We took it, or I took it that these weren't counted in. These were brought to the table.
No, they're counted.
Okay.
And Mr. Pilato, just hear me out for a second. So when the bank developed 6,000 square feet, they were allowed to install 45 spaces.
Right.
Just hear me out. They were allowed to hold, so they exceeded the spaces. They exceeded the amount of spaces because this requirement of parking, it says building use minimum parking spaces required, not the maximum.
But you go into the square footage of the building per square, per spaces, okay?
I know.
So this square footage, okay, reads under this code, all right? We're sitting here and we're talking about our code that states what it's supposed to be. We have a city manager or a city planner, okay, that is telling us this is code and what he recommends, all right? And you're coming to the board asking about this space that is covered under our code.
Absolutely. And what I'm saying to you is, when the bank was calculated on 6,000 square feet, they were given 45 spaces plus 16 stacking spaces. I realize they're not parking. I know.
That's just the
But
parking lot stacking.
45 spaces.
Correct.
Which exceeded the minimum requirements of the city.
Right.
We are asking to exceed it so we can have retail. We're asking for 9 feet, 4 inches, so we can put some parking spaces up front to attract tenants and get rid of the drive-through. And I know, Mr. Pilato, you do not agree, and that's
No,
clear.
the reason is basically you're comparing Gordon Food Service with your property, okay? If the buildings were in the same location, I wouldn't have a problem with it, I guess.
Let me bring a very
Okay.
important point here, and that's going to decide where is the practical difficulty. In order to have a parking lot that is functional, if it is one side parking lot, you need 42 feet. And if it's two-side parking lot, you need 62 feet.
Is your parking lot there functional right now?
No.
Is your parking lot functional?
So.
You have two entrances going in and out, correct?
Look, here
It functions.
here is, well, it is functioning for this tenant, but it's not functioning for this tenant. There's no way it's gonna be functioning.
The inherent problem here is the parking is in the wrong place and the building is in the wrong place. And you and I can agree that this building should not be as close to the front of the property because it creates an inherent problem. You can't park in front of the building without a variance.
This board didn't put the building there.
I understand that.
You guys didn't put you bought the building there.
I understand that.
Okay, so you're asking us for a variance, okay, where it's not even where it's supposed to be or where you want it to be.
Well, but we can't move the building. That's what
Absolutely.
creates practical difficulty. So I want to share something.
I was gonna say, I would just suggest letting Mr. Snell finish, I think, his presentation and then do the Q&A after that, unless you were already done.
Well, I want to share a couple things, just a couple.
I thought he was done, that's why it went.
Yeah.
Well,
Go ahead.
and it's okay, I'm a give and take guy.
Go ahead.
I do a lot of zoning in Sagamore, I've been doing this a long time. I handle all their things. These are a whole lot of pictures of the driveway to Gordon Food Service. So you can see how those driveways line up. The driveway actually, you know, that round part of the building, the driveway is like right at the round part of the building. I mean, when you come in, that's right there.
Sure,
You know,
yeah.
there's nowhere to move.
This is it right here.
And I understand.
Okay.
And that was never designed to hold any parking because the bank was just going to do a drive-through. I also put some pictures in here of Gordon Food Service. See the wall? This is the wall that they have at their parking. So you don't see the front of the cars. It kind of tucks underneath. That's exactly what we're proposing, the same thing. And then this is a picture of our building with the wall from Gordon Food Service. Does that make sense? So we're going to apply this same wall across the front of our property. You see how that lines up? I don't think it is, I do a lot of zoning in Sagamore. I've been their lawyer for probably 30 years, and I handle all the zoning stuff. I do think this is really a case of practical difficulties, and the practical difficulty is we can't move the existing building. We can't move the entrance to the existing building. We can't figure out a way, we could try to put parallel parking on the side, but we know we're gonna need another variance because we can't get a fire truck completely around the building. When it's a one-way, we can, I guess. But I haven't even tried to talk to Chief Ripley about it. He approved the plan that we have, but we need to attract tenants who can get their customers to their front door without walking 200 feet. Because none of us are going to do that in the winter. None of us are going to do that in the rain. None of us are going to do that when it's 90 degrees outside. We want to park and walk in. I hope that you consider this to be practical difficulties. My client has redone several buildings, one of which is in Broadview Heights where you operate out of. It's a beautiful building. He redid the building, it's top notch, it's beautiful. We need the variance so we can put these parking spaces in, create the building, bring the tenants in, and beautify this property. The property is underutilized the way it is, and it does not look good with the drive-through. We need to get rid of them, but we can't get rid of them without parking spaces. And it's hard for us to get anyone to agree they want the space if we can't show them where their customers will park. And that's our problem.
I've been owning this building since 2017, and it's been for rent since 2017. Actually, I would strongly appreciate it. Even the mayor told me one time, and he told me, if we're gonna give the building to a lot of restaurants, a lot of places to offer them if they can get it. He tried out, he said he sent emails to almost like 60 or 80 places, and none of them was interested. So I'm thinking about improving the look of the building, and my real estate agent is very excited to have it done in order to bring tenants. I'm working with the real estate agent who's renting Crocker Plaza and a lot of big places, so they are very experienced. And he has very hard problem. He keeps telling when you're gonna build it. The customers come and they look, they just go to the next one because there's a lot available. If I make it very attractive and welcoming, hopefully within a year I'll be done with this project, because I'm paying a lot of taxes on it, and to maintain it, it's a lot of expenses on me. And the way I try to rush it and to finish everything before the winter, but because you put my application on hold, I just cannot put
We didn't put your
400,000.
application on hold.
Yeah.
We gave you the option to put it on hold, okay?
Yeah.
We could have voted on it that evening if.
I appreciate it, but Mr. Robach helped me advised to put it on hold in order to.
Absolutely.
And at that time, I did not understand what practical difficulty. Let me present to you exactly. I think you guys didn't get the point I'm aiming to. To have a parking lot, you need 42 feet one side or 62 feet two sides. From here to here is 35. These parking lots are useless. From here to here is 13 feet. There is no way the cars can go back and forth. So this area is all paralyzed. Nobody can function this. This is by itself is practical difficulty.
Let me ask you a question. You're telling me it's a practical difficulty, okay? So when you drew these plans up, why did you put these in there then?
Because I need parking lot in front of my.
We need
it was-
handicap, can I tell you something? We need handicap spots that are close to the entrance of the retail. And so we put those handicap spots there. We don't think this is a substantial hardship. We do think it's consistent with the neighborhood. We don't think that the side yards and other requirements in the B2 district have been complied with, which is okay. But what that says is this is substantially in compliance with the character. Substantial justice will be done by granting the variance. We're going to do it top notch. The problem is, if you build the building and then say you have to come back and decide whether you can get the parking and you have to have a tenant, it's hard to get a tenant to commit without that here. To build these parking spaces now and that engineered wall is $80,000. At least that's the estimate we had. We don't know if that changed. So while he's going to put a substantial investment in the building, we're going to have a substantial investment here. We need the two together. Without these parking spaces, we don't want to speculate on a building because we don't know if customers can get to the building. And that's what prospective tenants are telling us. So we appreciate your view that maybe Gordon Food Service isn't perfect, but it has the same kinds of issues. How it came about, I don't know. I don't know how their building's 10 foot off the line when it should be 25 feet off the line. I don't know how other properties are, but I can say that it is consistent with the character of the neighborhood. And I think substantial justice will be done, and he will build it first class. I mean, this is going to look really good. You can see the renderings. The Planning Commission was excited about that. It's consistent with the Western Reserve theme. It's a consistent property. I'm sorry that things weren't communicated, and I want to apologize one, for being late, two, for not being here last month because I got COVID from my wife. So that's why I canceled.
And I will improve the look of the city. I'm very particular
Can I
about
say something?
what I own.
Sir, listen to your client,
What's that?
because you hurt my feelings.
Sorry.
You
What?
said you went to that dermatology place, and I forget the name of it.
Optima.
And Optima.
I watched the
You said we bend over backwards because they're bigger than what they wanted to be. I vote for what goes with the ordinance. We made changes on signage, in heights of building, if I remember right. I don't have it all, but we did not roll over backwards for any sign or for any size client.
So let me
Let me answer. I mean, pay all content to me. I went back after the last meeting in August 16, and I watched the whole thing, and I listened carefully to everything, and I kept the video running back, and I saw there were 5 variants granted. And I even, wow, 5 variant, is it even legal to give 5 variant? It's not, there is no other way other than they just like the
So
business.
let me try
To be honest with
to,
you,
can you give,
I went through this through Brad New Heights. I wanted to put
And he
an
got certain
electronic sign.
variances, yes. but
yeah,
he made
so
concessions.
let me share something with Dr. Al-Ravati is of Russian descent. So he comes from a different view of how governments function than we may view how governments function. And that's pretty obvious on what's happening in Eastern Europe right now, right? We have different views because he grew up in an era, he learned things in a different way than you and I have. So when he viewed the dermatology program, and I looked at it too, he saw 5 variances and said, wait, he has 5 variances. I'm only asking for 9 feet 4 inches. And so I don't think he meant anything offensively. What he meant was there were 5 variances on the table. How'd they get 5 variances? They don't even have a building. I got a building I can't move. I mean, I got entrances I can't move.
Once again, you're not comparing apples to apples, oranges to oranges, okay? Different location,
I
different
understand.
area.
I understand,
okay?
but I'm
So,
explaining why he didn't
I
view it that way.
understand, but
And I want to
this is how we're looking at it.
And I want to share
okay?
one more. The parking requirements that we're debating are not the maximums. The parking requirements are the minimums, right? Clearly, the bank meant the minimum and got 15 more spaces. We meet the minimum and we're asking for additional spaces. We're asking for that because the spaces we have, the planning person, the consultant didn't say that because they didn't, it's obvious, you know, there's a parking spaces, they're just 200 feet away, most of them. So you can't really get to the retail unless you park far away. And retailers just don't want that. So we hope that you view this as something that isn't substantial. It is in character with the neighborhood. It will improve the property. It will get rid of these 4 drive-through lanes. And we appreciate your time. We're open to any other questions you may have. And I'm sorry if I said anything or he said anything that was offensive, but we view, I've had a number of conversations with him. We view the world differently, and he views it differently because he doesn't understand practical difficulties. And that's why I went through the test.
Okay, so what I want to know, because we have so many papers here, what is the variance? Just spell it out. What
Exactly.
do you want? What are you proposing?
We
How
want,
many spaces, how many feet, all that, I need to know,
Yep.
otherwise I can't
so the requirement under,
feel that this is
the
good or bad.
requirement is under 1171.11E2A requires 20 feet from 82.
Okay,
We are asking for a variance
of 9,
that will give us 9 feet 4 inches closer than the 20 feet.
so 20, okay.
Okay, that's our variance.
Okay,
In that space,
that's the only variance,
that's
what
it,
you're
that's
asking?
one,
That's it.
that's
Doesn't have
it.
anything to do with how many parking spaces you're gonna put?
No.
Sure it does.
Will
It's
give
all
us, it will
No.
give us the park.
Let me be fair on this. The parking requirement of the city is not a maximum. The parking requirement of the city is a minimum. The minimum is every 200, you know, it depends on the use,
Yeah.
but just every 200 feet of retail, you must have 1 space of interior retail. The bank had 6,000 square feet of retail and got 15, quote, extra spaces, but that isn't prohibited.
Okay.
You're allowed to comply and
Are
do
you going to
that.
keep these handicap spaces here?
Yes,
I have to,
yes.
by law.
4 of them?
What, you
Yes.
just told me before you,
No.
that you're not gonna have them, they're gonna be gone.
They are non-functioning.
Well, they're difficult, let me say this to you.
They have to be
Wait, wait.
somewhere.
What's that?
They have to be somewhere.
They have to be
I
somewhere, we're
understand that.
putting them there. Are people going to use them for their handicap? Yes, right? Are people going to park there all the time? We all know a lot of parking spaces stay empty. Are they very practical for parking for handicap? Well, they're not the perfect, but we have to show them in front of our building.
Understood. I
We
heard
understand.
that they were going away. I guess.
Yeah.
No, we're not getting them away.
No, no.
We do- they're
Both
just
you
difficult
said
spaces.
that these are gonna be eliminated.
No, we're saying they're practically not, I apologize if I said,
You can read that.
Okay.
Okay, that's from our city planner.
and
Yeah, go ahead.
what he said was, there are 45 spaces,
Right.
and that those spaces are what are required in the minimum. But that doesn't mean you can't put more spaces. And those 45 spaces are not in the perfect place. So we'd like to move them to the front of the retail.
So I have a question. So if, hypothetically, if a tenant approached with, I remember hearing a juice place a few months back, and they wanted, I'm sorry?
Good memory, good.
And they wanted a drive-through, would this look different? Or if they wanted to be a bank, would this look different?
Well,
To go back into being a bank?
we don't think we're going to get a bank, because banks are actually getting smaller, not bigger.
Right.
Charter One is a little bank now.
But here, Mike, the.
Like
the
Pizza
reason-
Hut.
I have limitations on my deed that I cannot use it for a bank.
Okay, so I guess the intent of my question is to ask if there are other types of things that would impact the orientation of the property, based on who the tenant is. Because if the answer is yes, then we're back to square one with.
We do not anticipate it, and let me answer this question real carefully. There was a question about a drive-through at the last meeting, right? Could a drive-through be here? Maybe. I think it's very, very difficult and couldn't happen. Why? Because you're not wide enough. There's no way you could ever be wide enough. You can't put a drive-through here, right?
You mean a restaurant like McDonald's, is that what?
No, yeah, well, I don't know. Starbucks, a restaurant with a drive-through. Maybe McDonald's is bigger,
Okay,
but obviously Chick-fil-A or
Not
whatever.
another bank. 'Cause
But,
they're not gonna do that.
There is no way you could put a drive-through here. It's nice to talk about that. Is it practical? No. You can't put, this space will only be functional this way. Could multiple,
When you say this way, what do you mean this way? What's gonna be in there? Retail? What are you telling us?
we are marketing to retail. We are trying for retail and or a restaurant. It's probably not practical for a restaurant to have 14 spaces in front of your property and expect that to function. First watched, look at that, right?
Well, I
All the
mean,
parking.
this, I
It's
understand
a
where you're
retail
coming,
space.
okay?
It's a retail space.
You're telling us that these are the two front doors and those are deliveries.
Right.
It could be reversed if you really wanted it to be.
Except there's no, you could, but
Okay,
there's
and
no
you have your trucks
frontage
up.
on 82, and we wouldn't want to put the delivery entrance on the 82 side. You wouldn't want to see it.
Right.
And the planning commission would probably tell us no.
There's a big difference between having a building in the main street and the building on the side street that nobody sees. So the rent rate gonna be way different if I'm gonna make a building that is entered from the back. So in order to have a building that is accessible to the main street, I need to introduce it as it is in the main street, not in the side street in the back. Because from economic perspective, that's the way it needs to be done. This is a premium location building, and I need to utilize it according to my, to what's the benefit, the maximum benefit for the tenant and for me.
Ms. Metzel, did I answer your questions related to the variance?
Okay, if we're just looking for that amount of square footage to comply with parking spaces and nothing else is changing at all?
Correct.
Nothing else? Then you did answer my question.
Thank you.
Well, the last meeting we had, the BZA granted you a continuance, okay, on this, to bring back to the table what you could bring back, okay, tenant-wise, everything else. Personally, I don't see much difference than the first meeting that we had. That's my opinion on it, okay? I don't see a hardship, okay, as far as the planning, Mr. France, okay, our city planner, everything that's there, okay, is more than what's needed to be code-wise for the city of Macedonia, okay? You wanted us before to vote on something that we had no idea what's going in and what was happening, and I still feel it's the same way. That's my comments. Anybody else have any comments on that?
Can I
So,
answer you?
well,
The difference-
hang on.
The difference is, then I didn't understand what, because when the city meeting, the planning committee, and Mr. Brian, who wrote this, by the end of the meeting, he told me, he said it, you guys should not have problem with the zoning. It's really obvious that there is practical difficulty. That's what he told me. You can
But
go to
not
the
what he
city.
wrote. I
Not-
understand.
this-
So let me,
This was sent.
This was brought up in the
weeks.
first meeting.
Yes,
I read
yes.
this in the first meeting.
Yes.
I read it in the second meeting on purpose.
Can you
Okay.
please go
So-
and check the video and see what he
well,
said?
I don't think we're gonna do,
Let me say something, just because I've been around the block longer than some of you guys. Almost every case we get, he gives an opinion, and he always says, but the Board of Zoning Appeals can
Correct.
can
That's
overturn
what-
it and
that's
look
right.
at this, and I'm not, he's giving one man's opinion to.
Yes.
I understand he's the planner.
He's a city planner.
Right, but he
And he's
doesn't-
going by code, so he's not giving
He's
just
just
an
going, but he
opinion.
doesn't, right, and he doesn't
Okay.
know all the extraneous things that we're
Yes.
learning here.
Yes.
He's not, he
He's
doesn't.
at the planning commission, so he does learn and does
Okay,
know what's
but
going
What I'm
on.
saying is many times he points out, well, I wouldn't, go along with this, but then it's up to the Board of Zoning Appeals. We've granted many times things.
Absolutely.
And I'm not putting an idea out there, I'm just putting my idea of.
Oh, I guess
from where
what
I've
I'm
been
saying
around the
is
block here.
that the four of us or five of us, we're not the city planners.
Right,
We don't make the codes. We
No.
just try to abide by it.
Right.
Okay, if there is a variance, we do give a variance, all right? I understand where you're coming from. We
Okay.
have changed different things, but my
Right.
point is I don't see any difference from the first meeting to the second meeting.
well, you don't see the hardship that I see
No.
where.
No,
Okay, okay,
there's
okay, I
more,
mean, I
there's more
understand.
parking spaces that need to be there.
then the minimum,
Right.
then what's required is the
I
minimum.
get that, but what about
Let me ask you a
the?
question.
All right.
Yeah, if you want to go to a store like the last 2 weeks or 3 weeks, the width of the building here, the original building is 63, and here is 48. Here is 63, and from here to here, another maybe another 50. So the dentist gonna be, his customer is gonna be taking this place. So, and the three stores here, most probably their employees gonna be taking this place. If I'm gonna have any space, I'm gonna have it over here. So who gonna be walking? There is 100, there is another 100, maybe 200, 250 in the snow in order to access the building.
That's your plans. We understand your
Yeah,
plan.
is that
Okay.
legitimate difficulty or not to you?
You know,
I didn't see any store.
Well,
this one
if you
actually.
had 20 parking spots, then I would say there's a difficult, okay?
Is it
All right, but
because,
it isn't, because there is plenty, and actually, there's more than enough versus the code of the city.
can I ask a question?
Yeah.
If we got rid of some of the parking spaces that we had and were able to move them to the front, would you accommodate that? Because
Why would you want to move?
Because
get rid
we
of
want them
parking?
in front of the retail, for the reason
Yeah,
that
but if
I
you're
want
talking
to pull
about-
in and
Now you're
walk
talking
in.
about 3 different businesses, and you want to get rid of parking spots?
No,
Are you going to get
you-
rid of 14 parking spots?
Well, wait a minute. Your argument was you already have the minimum in the city, therefore you can't have more.
You have more than the minimum.
I
of the
understand
city.
that. And the bank had more. So
We're
what
not
we're
worried
trying
about
to say is we have them, but they're in the wrong place.
The number of spaces is not what's in question.
It's the question of we can't get to the retail, the customers. Sorry.
No, that's,
And so let me hear, I hear what you're saying. Nothing has changed.
I think
And-
your point is, if I maybe could misconstrue it for a second, is even without the spaces you want to move to the variance, you're still going to meet the minimum.
Yes.
And the spaces you're asking to move are basically bonus spaces that you don't need anyways. Is that kind of your point?
I will need every single space.
We believe we will need the spaces in the back.
Because I'm in the field.
That would be my
But
answer.
I am sorting out this question, and this is the question you raise. Well, you have 45 spaces, therefore you don't need any more, right? So my question is,
Did not
if
say
we
that you did not need any more. I says you have more than
enough,
needed.
you have more than the minimum.
Right.
You have more than the
ahead.
minimum, but can we not build more than the minimum? Because there's nothing required. And so my question is, if the issue is you have too many spaces, which I didn't I'm not clear if you're viewing it that way. You know, could we take these spaces and move them here? I mean, we don't want to do that because we think we need all these spaces.
You need, if you're the owner of a building, you need as many spaces as you can
But
have.
every space
You
that
wouldn't
we
want to
have.
delete those.
But every space.
You told me before, or told us before, you were
I
gonna
know,
delete these.
but every
No.
space we have, so you understand that, comes with a stormwater fee, right? Because we all pay $9 a month for every 3,000 square feet.
Right.
So the view of having more is something we don't. Let me be clear, there's 4 of you tonight. Obviously, if you vote us down, we can't come back for a year. We can't do really we're stuck. We can't do much with this building without being able to provide some parking for a retailer. Retailers want to see it. And we hope that you would approve it because we don't think this is substantial. It's 9 feet 4 inches, and it's the ability to put in these parking spaces that you won't even see from 82 as you drive by.
Let me, like, the dentist was taking the space, which is, he's taking 28 square feet, 6 operatories. 6 operatories, that means there's 6 patients. Normally office, dental office, that's what I have now.
He's a
When
dentist.
You need two people in the front. For 6 operators, you need 2 dentists, 2 hygienists, and because the dentist will work in 2 rooms, okay, and the hygienist will have 2 rooms. So the staff only by themselves gonna need to be 8 to 10 people, 8 to 10 parking spots in the parking lot. Now, the chairs, there are 6 chairs, 6 people in the chairs, and there is overlap of 4 people at least. So we are talking about a full capacity. This dentist need 18 parking spots to be functioning. This is almost all the space and half of this. And I'm having here 1 store, 2 store, 3 store.
Retail.
Does
However
that, does that make sense to you or not?
How many spaces do you need for those stores?
Well, we're providing the amount of spaces that we would need at the minimum, 200 square feet. That's what kind of retail is. Every 200 square feet of interior, 1 space. So every 1,000 feet, we would get 5 spaces. So the 2,000 we're adding, the city planner says, well, you already have the spaces for that. Even though you're adding 2,000, that would be an additional 10 parking spaces. He said, but you already have that. We do. They're just in the wrong place. They need to be here so our customers can get in. And, you know, this, it just so happens, he's a dentist and so is my wife. So I kind of know his industry. And what happens is these 6 operatories, 6 patients, 2 hygienists, dentists, you start adding it all up and adding all the customers, they're kind of eating all these spaces, and then you're left with this. So the practical difficulties, so we're clear, and I know you don't agree, and you're very good at arguing, and I appreciate this very much.
You should have been an attorney, huh?
You should have been an attorney. The very,
Going there.
really, the problem here is the practical difficulties is, it's not anything we've done. It's where the building sits. It's the practical difficulties. It makes it impossible to move the driveway. It makes it impossible to move, really, the parking without the variance. We can't accomplish it because we can't get in and around the building.
We're doing all of this for 14 parking spots. Am I correct? in
It's
saying
very
that?
important. For
Yes.
It's
people.
very important. We don't know what's going in there.
Well, that's true,
You
but
will
we
don't know.
You will know
You know-
that every tenant gonna come, they're gonna have floor plan that's gonna come to the meeting, and they're gonna present their plan to the city, and it's gonna be just a shell, nothing inside. It's just walls.
we're going to build it blank.
Yeah.
So that we have to go to
Nothing.
planning.
Every tenant gonna come to you, gonna come to the planning with
The
the
plan.
floor, the electric, the HVC, the floor, the everything. It's empty. Everyone, nobody can just go in and occupy the space. They're all gonna need to come and introduce their business
We
to
understand
you.
that. When it was first presented, once again, it was 1 building, 1 tenant. Now it's 3.
Well,
Okay?
I'm sorry,
I wish it is one.
You weren't there, I
understand,
understand.
yeah.
I'm just relaying what was said. If I'm incorrect,
I don't recall
I'll
because
just say.
it was up in the air.
Yeah,
I-
this plan never changed. It has been approved, so it's not changed. and it shows you here is one door entrance, here is one door entrance, and here is the emergency exit in the back.
And
So this
those,
is
last meeting, those
so-
4 doors were entrances and were an emergency exit. But go ahead, I'm listening.
By code.
I understand what code is.
Every retail space need to have entrance and emergency exits. So one in the front, one in the back. So there is 1,300 square foot. They're all gonna be working from this place. This place have 4 parking spots. The space from here to here is 35 feet. They cannot even use this. Even the handicap who gonna need to park here, they cannot use it because the car is 20 and to back end need 22. Here is 35. I cannot even, these are very difficult to utilize.
But the variance is going to give us that additional space so we can back out of those spaces because it's going to open this driveway, which is
Yes,
13 feet
yes.
to a wider area.
Yes.
So traffic can come in and out the same way instead of a one-way all the way around. I have tried to look at this 1,000 different ways over the past 2 months, and I've done this twice because I had COVID, so it gave me a lot of time to look at this. I appreciate all your input and all of your thoughts here. I think it's consistent with the neighborhood. I think it's not substantial. I think it, if the hang up, and I haven't really heard this, but if the hang up is, well, we don't want all this parking in the back if you're going to put parking in the front. Well, if that's something, we could try to accommodate that. But in reality, this isn't substantial. It will improve the building. It will improve everything there. It will make this space viable for tenants. It's not viable the way it's constructed. And there's no way, you move this building up, you still create the problem. You try to move this back, you can't really because that's where the overhang is. And even if you do, you just create a bigger problem in the back where you have to get around the building and fire won't let you do that because you can't get around. There's really no way to do this. Our practical difficulties is not by our own doing. It's because a building sits where it sits and we can't move it. That's our practical difficulties. Is it consistent with what's in the neighborhood? It is. Is Gordon Food Service going to lose business? Are government services going to be any different? Is this substantial? No, it's not. And so I think this is really a case for a variance. And any tenant that comes in here, we're going back to the planning commission. We'll comply with all those requirements. We need to get tenants, and we can't without the ability to get in the front door. And we can't put the front door in the back of the building and the back door in the front of the building on some of the building, and then the other part of the building, the other door is on the side of the building. I mean, none of us are ever going to go there. When we drive by, we're going to be like, what's in there? That's crazy. How do you even get into that place? Well, you got to go to the back side. But if you want to go to the dentist, you got to go to the side. It just doesn't work. So if you can come up with a thought of how we should do this differently, we'd be glad to do that. The City Planning Commission has approved this subject to this 1 9-foot, 4-foot variance. That's all we need.
Well, there are other things. I did find the minutes.
Oh, good.
And they did grant final approval to this plan.
Right.
But it was subject to administrative review of outstanding comments, including landscape, engineering, which dealt with the design of the retaining wall, the stormwater, and probably most critical is the architectural. That roof ends up being the kind of the problem area because that has to disguise or hide all the rooftop equipment. So I don't know if that's been looked at. I don't need to see it right now, Doctor. That's okay. But that is something that will end up being reviewed as well. So the variance is one piece of the puzzle of their approval.
And when you said it was approved, okay, clarify yourself as what was approved. The site plan?
The site plan, the planning commission
As it
has,
sits right here.
yeah, they have a history of approving a site plan and then allowing administrative approvals to go ahead and take place, but they see where their role
But
is
since the
at.
planning commission at our first meeting of the BZA, the site plan hasn't changed, but as of we're hearing this evening, it has changed, but it's not been approved.
No, we haven't changed the site plan. We added the landscaping And we addressed the roof line because
Here is the roof, and that's what you're gonna get in a couple, hopefully, you guys gonna grant
the
us
roof
approval.
line, they wanted a.
That's on the planning commission,
Yes,
that's not
this is the
us.
roof. This is
Okay.
the roof that they asked for, and we did it as they asked us
They
for.
wanted all the roofs, instead of a flat roof, they wanted a roof with dimension instead of the flat roof, which is on the driveway.
Right, and I just wanted to clarify that, that work would not begin on the site until all of those qualifications were met. With or without the variance, none of the site work would be able to, with or without the variance, none of the work would be able to progress unless you would withdraw the variance, and then it wouldn't become a factor, but the other factors do stay.
All the factors you mentioned, we addressed them, and the architect did them based on your requirement on the
We'll bring them
planning
back.
committee.
Yep.
And when you get the drawing, this is the final, this is going to you, because I asked the architect to do the whole thing. And we addressed it based on the planning commission requirements. So you will get all the requirements.
Then the city planner had a lot of suggestions about the kinds of materials and plantings. We changed it all to comply with those things, and we will take that. I want to thank you all for your careful consideration. I want to apologize again that we were not here at 6:30, thinking it was 7. Thank you for your.
No problem.
And last statement. This is gonna cost me to build retaining wall and parking lot, 80,000 to 100,000. If I don't see it is important for me, I will not spend that much money on it, because I see this is more important than anything else, to have the customers for the future tenant be able to access the building without walking more than 200 feet, especially in the winter time, or if they are older people.
This board takes everybody, I'll try the word I want to use. They're not for granted, okay? We're not here to say no to everything, okay? We're here to better the city. We're here to go by the codes, all right? So this is what we try to do all the time. Whether you're Optima Dermatology or you're here on 82 on the building, okay? It doesn't matter. We don't, that's,
We know that,
Okay,
and
I
I've
just
dealt
wanna
with
make sure.
communities who've done
The
this.
city will look much better when you
That's
drive,
what
when
I'm
exiting
concerned
from
about,
here.
is
It's gonna look much better.
it'll just sit there then, and they won't be able to get the tenant in, and it's just gonna be a dental office with you're still gonna have the drive-throughs, right? Because you have
It's
no
all rusty.
incentive,
It's
you don't have any
deteriorating.
incentive
You don't know what to do with
finish
it.
the building. I think as business people, we have to respect their viewpoint of bettering, their investment, sure, but also the city is gonna look so much better when this is completed and that space is utilized rather than being vacant.
I own my own businesses for 30 years. I've sat on this side of the table and I'm on this side of the table. So I understand where you're coming from and I understand where they're coming from. Okay, so I don't know if anybody else could do that. There you
I have
go.
a
Go
I have
ahead.
a question. Does the city have a legal opinion on this type of situation? Is it purely based on board opinion, or is there?
So fortunately for me, I'm not in the hot seat. That's your guys' job to be in the hot seat and apply the Duncan factors as enunciated in our codifieds. I will say, I can appreciate the chicken and the egg analogy from the applicant's position. They want to do everything they can to attract business. To the board's point that was referenced earlier, you normally have a situation where you have a use, a known use, someone coming in and saying, we're doing X on this property. The board then has the benefit of looking at the geographical characteristics and other factors or facts surrounding that property and applying those factors, which don't focus on, the Duncan factors really don't focus on the best use or the specific intended use, but that use gives you some insight into how things are going to work on the property and allow you to make your decision on whether or not they meet the practical difficulty standard. So I know that's a non-answer,
So
but
the term known use, is that
The term what?
known use that you used, is that something that is like from a legal perspective that?
You either know the use that's gonna be proposed or not, and here, you don't have a known use, you have an idea that it's going to be retail,
know who
or
the tenant
retail
is
or
or
restaurant
tenant.
is what the applicant's telling the board.
Is it a non-use for me as an owner, like any property that you build, you rent it? I know that the use for me as an owner, I want to utilize the 1.5 acres in a better way, but in a prime location. I want to invest this property in a better way to bring me more income. I am the business, I am the owner of the business, and I want to improve my location as an owner, whether it is an apartment building or it's a retail space or anything. I want to develop my place like any other plaza I did, I showed you earlier.
Sure.
Yeah, and when a tenant comes in, they will come to the city and present their plans, their floor plans, and he will have his argument with you.
So-
Yeah, I'm the owner.
And I can appreciate that.
Yes.
I can appreciate that. And the very last thing you said is exactly what I just said. The board normally has a situation where there is a tenant that comes and says, this is what we're gonna do, like that example you used earlier of Optima, when they came to the city, that was known to be the use. And that enabled the board, I think, to analyze the situation maybe a little bit more fully from their perspective, is what your question was indicating.
Yeah, the intent of my question was not necessarily that we have, we get an answer on, approve or not. Is that the intent was that, are we maintaining the integrity of the board? And that's, again, not a question that
The board and the codes and our city planner.
So, Mr. Farrar, let me try to answer this in another way. So you are a quasi-judicial entity. Mark can correct if I say anything wrong. You are like a judge, right? You are here to call balls and strikes, right? You are the end of the road for us. If you say no to this, we're saying we probably can't attract a tenant without being able to demonstrate the parking. And so we're kind of in a pickle. And Mark picked up on, I actually have 18 chickens in Sagamore Hill. So I do know a chicken and an egg and who comes first, because I visit it every day. And it is the chicken and the egg, because we can't get access for customers as it exists. I appreciate you all, because you are trying to do the very best for your city, and you're trying to apply the balls and strikes as best you can. You have to look at this situation and determine if we have demonstrated practical difficulties warranting 9 feet 4 inches, and I know, whatever, like the property next door, like other properties nearby, so we can develop this property. I, NTE, would like to get rid of 4 drive-throughs that sit there. But without some concession, I don't know how to use that space. I don't know where to park the customers or where to make the people be able to come in. Because even if you say this can't occur, and we just take this 2,000 square feet, 4 parking spaces, we're not gonna make that fly as retail. So he's not gonna invest to do this. He wants to do all of it and make 1.5 acres
Yeah, and we
usable.
appreciate that.
Yeah,
For sure.
so that's the variance that we seek, and your job is to call a ball and a strike. Did we meet this burden?
So-
It is unique to these circumstances. It is not precedent setting across the city. Nobody else has a building that's built like this up here where we can't do it. And what's funny is we look at this and we say, well, if we know the use, then we know exactly, like Optima, right? I don't know the details of Optima. Optima's gonna build this building, and then in 20 years, Optima's gonna sell, and now Joe's Pool comes in and says, I wanna use this as a pool house. And then they say, why did they build the building here?
But 20 years from now, they'll come to the boards, the planning
Well, like we
commission
did.
or the BZA.
I understand.
okay?
That's why we're here,
But the
for the
building's
ball.
not gonna move, everything's gonna be the
And
same.
we're not moving the building either.
Right.
Great, we're not moving the building either. But what happened is when this building was allowed to be built, there wasn't a thought of Well, what do you do with that other space if you don't use it as a drive-through? How do you make this property work? Everybody thought banks would be in big buildings with lots of drive-throughs, and now they're just on your phone and you just wire a check in, right? So that's why we're here.
Thank you for that.
Sure.
I have two additional questions for the city. Number one is are we able to grant a conditional variance based on, retail or restaurant and that's it? Or is that too broad? And the second question is, what happens if there are four of us and there are, in the theoretical situation of split vote?
If there's a tie, I'll defer to the law director on that. As far as like conditional, I would tell you as a code official, I personally do not like that in a Board of Appeals setting because you need to actually apply the conditions and perhaps there's a level above that can be accessed. I would only give a thought that you maybe we allow him to go at other parts of this project and he comes in to us with his true tenant at that time. But I don't know how practical that is or not. But the thing is,
Conditional, and 10 years or 20 years down the road, he
Right.
sells it, okay, and it's not what we voted on, okay, or we had the variance for, and we tell you, okay, now you gotta take out those parking spots.
This is my requirement.
Well, that's not the point. The point is, okay, this is where unconditional.
and
It was just a curiosity.
And Mr. Farrell, part of that is just me sitting in the position that I'm in. If it goes conditional, that just creates another layer of monitoring.
And potential.
And potentially falling through the cracks. So I'm not a real big fan of conditional type
And then
things.
what happens if the vote is split? It'll fail.
It'll fail.
You have to have three
You do need
affirmative
three affirmative.
votes.
Okay.
Okay. so-
It'll fail, and then we can't come back for a year, even if we want to come back. And obviously, what we would come back with, because we've looked at this a million ways, we don't know another option. Like, we don't know. I realize it's not a new show from August 18th, because I can't come up with a solution. So I think we're just
That's why
stuck.
we had it. Granted
And
that,
we
okay.
appreciate it so much.
And that's great,
that was
okay, but
great.
we expected when you came back today, that would be, we know everything.
Well, we're trying to give you everything. We can't figure out where to move a building to create retail except in this way. And we're open to any ideas. We hope that this passes. We hope we get a variance so we can move forward.
Is there a deed restriction that restricts you from?
He can't use it as a bank.
Okay.
Because he bought it from Huntington, so Huntington won't allow us to move a new bank in to use the drive-through.
Got it.
For obvious reasons.
So you do that up front.
Well, we know that.
Yeah,
Yeah, well, that's why it's
So
vacant,
that's
because
a
the only
possibility.
drive-through would be a bank. Who else would want?
that'd be a
more than one?
possible tenant as another
I
bank.
cannot give it to a bank.
I understand that,
Yeah.
I understand.
We're deed restricted.
Well, does the board have any other questions? Because I'm gonna make a motion.
1, 2, 3, 4. The only main entrances you have are the two in front.
Correct.
Two,
Yes.
there is no possibility of putting entrances on the side.
Well, there's nowhere to park on the side, and there's no visibility on the
You don't know
side.
my wife, she'll walk a mile to get to the store.
But this is like a drive-through lane for the fire, basically, to get around the building.
Okay.
Any other questions? Go ahead, Dick. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, go ahead.
Well, I'm gonna make a motion to deny case 660 for the variance that was brought to us tonight. Because of the code, the city planner, and everything else that we discussed this evening.
You don't see the hardship.
No, I don't see anything different, like I said, from the first meeting to this meeting.
And I have to tend to agree, I will second that motion.
Rachel, take a roll call, please.
Mr. Pilato?
Yes,
Wait, okay, the motion's to deny, so yes is to deny.
yes,
Yes,
yes.
sorry for denying.
Mr. Iafreda?
Yes. Yes.
Ms. Messel?
No.
Mr. Ferraro?
No.
So
Too bad Kent wasn't here.
we're back for a year. We can't come back to see you again.
Correct.
And if someone else has another idea, I guess we're open to try to do that, but we don't know what to do to utilize this property. It's unfortunate. Thank you for your time.
You're welcome. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
The motion of case 660 has been denied. And is there a motion? Oh, well, we'll get a couple other things we're going to go over tonight. Thank you, gentlemen. Does anybody have my Gordon Food Service? No. All right, I'll get another one. Sorry. It's okay. I just wanted to keep it in my files, but that's all right.
What else do we have on it?
We did the voting already, all right? One other quick thing, and Councilwoman Jessica Brandt sent me an email that council is, make sure I put this right here. Council has a proposed charter amendment. Now the message isn't coming up, that's great. Do you know anything about this? About the supermajority?
Are you doing this under other new business or how?
No, just a heads up, or do you want me to just leave it go until it comes in the?
What I could do, I can send the board a copy of the proposed charter amendment that council has.
Okay, well,
It's just pertaining to virtual meetings, but I can send the board some information on that.
Why don't you? It'd be easier that way.
Yeah.
But it's really nothing yet, okay?
Something we have to vote on, or
No.
is this
No.
gonna happen whether
No.
we want it to? or
It
not?
probably will happen, I would say, correct? It's a supermajority vote where we could do meetings virtually or we could do in person. And it'll be through email. So if we all say yes, okay, or 4/5 of us say yes, we want to do
Meeting by
virtual.
meeting, or
That would be up to you.
Yeah, it'll be up to us. We could do it virtually, you know, 1 meeting, 3 meetings, the whole year, whatever we want. So-
Yeah, actually, the legislation is probably posted outside the door there, but I'll email you a copy
Is
as well.
that going to be for all the different
Yeah, all commissions,
commissions?
planning
Yes.
boards, yes, and council too.
Parks and Rec and all those? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, council too?
Yeah,
Not even coming in here?
yep.
Oh,
In the event of a weather or public health emergency only, though.
yeah. Oh, good. Otherwise, they're
Yep.
going to utilize the space. So I
Right.
hope
Is there
so.
something, which I was
It's a
going
nice
to
place.
question.
Go
They
ahead.
put a restaurant in there.
Just wait till we're done with the meeting, please.
Oh, we're still in, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we're still in the meeting. Does anybody else have any other information or news? Okay. Any motion to adjourn?
Oh, now we can adjourn? Okay. I'll make a motion to adjourn.
second.
A second?
All in favor?
All in favor, Rachel? Thank you.
Rachel, is there anything coming up?